I am, as always, so glad you're here because we have a lot to discuss. It is market update time. These are unedited videos that I just sit down and record and look at some different data and metrics and or news about what's going on in the real estate market, particularly the Denver real estate market. But also sometimes we look at national trends and just get an idea of where we've come, where we are, and where we're headed. I'm recording this in late September, so that gets us an idea of kind of where we're at, and we're moving into the sort of the final phase of the year. Real estate's very seasonal, especially in the Denver real estate market. I talk about that all the time. If you've seen these videos before, you know that we're in a much slower market, much more buyer friendly than we've been in years. Inventory continues to climb, not as quickly as one might assume, given a few factors, and we'll discuss that. But I want to give you an idea of where we're at and what's going on. If you're new here, lovely that you're here. Glad that you're here. Sam Newman. I run a real estate team here in the Denver Metro called the Alchemy Group. It's our goal to be your go-to resource for anything, buying, selling, just talking about it. We would love for you to reach out. There is a way to do that down in the description. So I wanted to start today by looking at this graphic. I found this interesting, and this is looking nationally and talks about 1 year change in metro level home prices. It's in July, so comparing July 24 to July 2025. So it was a few months ago, but still gives us a good barometer for what's going on. And what you see here, of course, Denver is right here, so we'll look at what that means. But orange to more reddish means a bigger drop in home prices. We're seeing in many places in the country, home prices dropping, and some much more than others. There's a lot of reasons for that. People would have expected home prices to drop more based on inventory here in Denver. For the most part, they've been flat. So they got us at, based on this color, we can't zoom in, but based on this color here, I'm thinking it's about a 2% drop year over year. I'm going to check the MLS data to see what that shows. But this gives us a national idea of what's going on. So what you're seeing is a lot of these places that had big COVID run-ups, that were big winners, people moving there during COVID. COVID was crazy in a lot of places in real estate. But Texas and Florida in particular were big winners for people moving there and saying, I want to live in a place like this, warmer weather. During COVID, it was definitely more open COVID policies. After that, politically, has been discussed a lot, more honestly right-leaning areas were, at least for a time, much more attractive to the masses as far as moving to there. What we're seeing based on this chart is a lot of the big winners in the COVID boom for people moving to there, are now coming back to earth. So a big winner there was Austin. Austin is down 6% year over year as of this graph. When you hear people talk about Austin real estate prices, it's interesting. In my estimation, and I'm not an expert on that market for sure, but in my estimation, that's probably the worst place to be trying to sell a home right now. Looking at Florida, especially South Florida, they have the reddest circles. So Punta Gorda, wherever the hell that is, that's the 12% drop. Cape Coral, that's a 10% drop. Florida was a big winner too. But the difference between Florida and Austin, Texas is Florida, yes, had a run up, but the prices didn't skyrocket as much as they did in Austin. So if you're a person trying to buy in Austin, or did buy in Austin, you had to pay a ton of money. I mean, home prices just went bonkers there. And now they're coming back to earth. And so only down 6%, but you really had to pay a premium, and it's coming down to more reasonable levels. And I know inventory is sticking on the market there a long time. So basically, I don't know what this says about anything, but you're seeing lots of parts of the South that our prices are coming down, that had those big booms, and prices are coming down. And I think it means people may have moved there for a very specific reason, and now are finding maybe they don't want to live there. For one reason or another. Maybe they don't want to own a home there. Who knows what's going on? But people can make decisions about what's going on at the moment. All the COVID policies, of course, are over. And so there are changes about, you move there and you might go, wait, what happened? I'm not by my family. I'm not by my friends. I don't want to live in Florida. Have you been to Orlando? I have. Not my favorite spot. Texas, we're seeing some of the same things. Austin is the biggest part of it. California, yeah, you're seeing tepid drops, but it's in line, I think, with what's going on in Denver. So listings have shot up so much. Affordability, I talk about it all the time on this channel, has been a big, big challenge. And so we're kind of where we usually are, which is somewhere in the middle. We're like a lot of these West Coast areas, but just a more muted version. So Phoenix too was a big winner. They say they're down 3.5% year over year. That's not that much. It's definitely going to feel like a lot if you're trying to sell and you bought, especially during that frenzy. But this happens. Cycles happen. That's the big thing. Cycles happen. And not only do they happen, they're necessary. They're an important part of, the only way that residential real estate happens, or the only way it has happened in the past, is up, then down, then up. Over time, the arrow goes up and to the right. It always has. But there are periods of expansion and periods of contraction. You don't have to be an economist to know that that happens in any section, any segment of the economy, at least as far as I'm aware. So that's what's going on in real estate. You see in parts of the Midwest, which is really interesting. The Northeast, they always seem to win. So there's some greenish yellow there, but there's a lot of blue. That means prices are still going up. But Detroit, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, a lot of these places didn't have the big boom, but are still going up at a more reasonable rate rather than going flat or dropping. Weather seems to be evening out. A lot of people were flocking to these warm weather areas now. Maybe for whatever reason, they're flocking back to areas that the weather's not as great, and who knows why. We're not tracking migration here. We're just seeing what's happening with home prices. So I found that interesting. Here's another one. This is a bad graph. This is poor resolution. It's all I could find. But this is just inventory broken down by region. We're the red graph, so we're in the West region. And again, what does that even mean? West? Is Colorado the same as California? No, but they get lumped in together. But the South region, boy, oh boy. Look at that graph where inventory is gone. You see why their home prices are going down at the highest rate. You see why they're having a hard time selling, is because there's just so much on the market. For whatever reason, people who decided to move there are now deciding to move out. So, and we're going to get to inventory locally. I always like to talk local, so we're going to get to that here in a bit. But I did want to give you, this is kind of the most, let me just expand this a little bit, but this is the most, I move myself over here, recent development, I guess, when it comes to real estate. Mortgage rates. We talked about mortgage rates all the time. And, mortgage rates were the cause, essentially, of the big COVID boom being so low. And then they were the cause, when they shot up, of things slowing down so much. So rates dropped. The last few weeks, rates have come down. They actually bottomed out at 6.13, 6.15. Then they went up a little bit. So we're at about 6.37 right now. What this tells me, that's in line with what I'm seeing, 6.37. So still well into the sixes, but a big change from where they sat for the better part of 2 years, which is high sixes into the low sevens. And that matters, especially when we're talking about the real estate prices here in Denver. $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 house. You're talking about a loan that's, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 or more. The difference between 6.75 and 6.3 is significant on what your monthly payment will be. So a couple things. Rates came down. Did we see a big boom in buyers coming out of the woodwork? No, no. Seasonally, it's a slower time for buyers. Kids are back in school. I talk about seasonality all the time. I won't go on it here, but anecdotally and within the data, we're not seeing a big change. So that tells me that even though this is a significant change to sit and kind of level out, at least for a little bit, around 6.3, it's not enough to get buyers off the sideline and get them out there at this point in the year. What's interesting too, the second thing, I guess, is that mortgage rates were at their lowest before the Fed held their meeting and decided to cut interest rates, which are not mortgage rates and are not technically tied together. And then after they cut interest rates, mortgage rates actually went up. Well, what's going on there? I won't get all the way into it, but basically the mortgage markets are not directly tied to the Fed fund rate, which is the rate that the Fed is cutting or raising. And it is, the mortgage markets always anticipate. The private market, the money markets, the money will always anticipate and always move faster from what public policy does. So Fed cuts rates quarter point, that was already priced in. That was already priced in. The mortgage markets already anticipated that when we went down here. At the lowest level. Then it coincided with the Fed announcement essentially was moot at that point, unless it would, they would have reversed course and done something completely different. But the financial markets are pretty good at projecting what's going to happen. And so there was some other financial news that then caused mortgage rates to go up. Again, always going to be ahead of the Fed's announcement. So if you're confused about that, some people are, that's what's going on there. And we're going to get into info sparks here. So this is RE Colorado. That's our Denver Metro MLS. And this data is coming directly from InfoSparks. And so I don't know where the best place to put me is going to be. I think it's going to be there. I'm going to take this and go down here while we talk about this. This graph is active listings, okay? And this is for single family residences. We could do all subtypes too. That's fine. That brings in condos. The big difference between single family and condos. Single family still, even with active listings up much higher, still much more desirable a market to be in if you're selling. Condos are tough right now. The right ones at the right price are still selling. We could talk about what that means, but let's just take, this is all property subtypes. I'm just going to continue moving myself around. I think I can make me smaller. There we go. There we go. We don't need to see Sam. We need to see the graph. Look at this graph. That's what this segment is called. So this is active listings. And this is over 5 years. Right now, we're at, in the entire MLS, about 25,000. What does that mean? Nothing, other than it means it was higher than it's been in any time since 2020 or before. You see the seasonal wave, up and down, up and down. So, of course, it's always going to be higher, usually within reason, always higher in the fall. And that's what's happening here. But comparatively, much higher. So August 2025. 25,000 listings. August, let me find it, 2024, 21,000. So a big difference there. And what's interesting to me is if we take this all the way back to the max that RE Colorado will show. So we're 25,000. When's the last time we had that many listings on the market? It was basically late 2011, so 14 years. If my math is somewhat right. Essentially 14 years since we've had that many listings. And what was going on in 2011? Well, we were still in the midst of the recovery from the great financial crash that the mortgage and housing industry caused. And so, listings were way higher then. I mean, they were enormously high. 2010, really 2009, then 2010 into 2011, then the recovery really began in earnest. So, it is a significant thing to see listings this high, higher than any time they've been since the recovery started from the Great Recession. We had 2008, 2009. And I mentioned earlier, they're still not as high as one might expect because affordability, we've looked at affordability graphs before. There is an argument to be made that affordability is worse than it has ever been in the history of this great nation when you factor in inflation and interest rates and home prices when it comes to buying a home. It's very challenging on a monthly payment basis. What's happening though is many, and I don't know if we have it here. I don't think they have it now for expired listings, but tons of sellers are pulling their listings off the market because they're going out, they're expecting to get a price, even something reasonable. Even a price that's, I always say a seller's opinion of the value of their home is the highest number that Zillow ever showed them. That's going to stick in the head. But even if they're saying, hey, I know the market slowed down, we're going to take it down and list it something, that my neighbor sold for a year ago. We're way slower than that. So they're getting out there. They're getting 1, 2 no showings. They're sitting on the market for a few months, sticking it out. And then they're just saying, I don't need to sell now. If people need to sell now, that's different. But for a lot of people who don't, they're choosing to pull their home off the market rather than take a dramatically reduced purchase price. And that's keeping prices relatively flat in the Denver Metro. And that's keeping inventory, while it has gone up a ton, lower than it could be. And so when we look at, this is closed listings, fewer transactions happening. You see that fewer transactions happening because of these factors we're talking about. Okay, in August we were at 6,100. I mean, it's down really, probably lower than any time since prior to 2020. But when we look at close prices, this is what's really interesting. And so you see up, 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 up. Like I said, there's ups and downs, but over time the graph goes to the right. Then of course we got into COVID here. And prices peaked early 2022, mid 2022, let's say. And let's look at single family residences, just because I think it's more indicative of the market as a whole here in the Denver metro. And this is the max, but let's take this down to 5 years. And actually, let's take it down to 3 years. Okay, so this is what prices are doing over the last 3 years. So in August, entire MLS for single family was $615,000. So that was really the Denver metro. That's what this MLS covers. And so if we look at August 2024, and again, it's seasonal, 610 versus 615, they actually have us up slightly year over year. Let's look at July, because that's what that first report was looking at, 620. 625. So down slightly. So like I say, basically flat is what's happening here in the Denver metro. And so we can look at price per square foot too. I have an aside on that, but if we take this to 5 years, this gives us a good idea of what prices have done. Like I said, they were up, they peaked. They've come down a little bit, but overall, since the peak of the market, it's been mostly flat. 22 was interesting because that's the year that rates shot up. And so things really bottomed out late 22, earlier 2023. Then the spring market kicked in and things leveled out again. And so I've said before, and I still do believe based on what we've seen, we're going to keep seeing this line over here going down through the end of the year. And when you look at it at a whole, 2025 will be the year in the Denver metro that prices finally came down. And then in the spring, things will kick up again and keep going. The question to me is, what do we need to see here? What do we need to see out of the mortgage rates to get this graph to start going up again? And the low to mid sixes isn't doing it, at least not as of right now. The fives, there's something psychologically about breaking into a new category. If rates get into the fives, I think that may do it. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. It's really going to take affordability, which interest rates are part of, to get to a point where people feel more comfortable buying a home and making that monthly payment and making that investment. So especially based on this, guys, if you're a seller, that's what I say, like, this is not the best time of the... I'm not saying, hey, wait it out till the market improves. We don't know when that's going to be. We don't know when, it could be a year, could be 3 years, 5 years, who knows, till we get back to a more bullish seller's market here in the Denver metro. But seasonality is important. And so I say, if you're thinking about selling, wait, start prepping things in January, get it on the market in February, March. That's kind of the best time to try to capture the sweet spot of the market where the most buyers are out looking. Now, some people can't. Like, I have a client I was talking to today. We're going to list next week. He doesn't want to, it's vacant. He's not just going to hold his home till February, March to try to get another $10,000, or $15,000 because he's got holding costs. That would be a wash at best, probably even a little less. You'd probably be losing money. So if you need to sell right now, still a good time. It's a good time to sell. If you need to sell right now, you can get your home sold right now. You got to price it effectively. Pricing strategies, trying a little higher and then seeing what happens and saying we'll come down if we have to. That is a death sentence right now for pricing homes. You will get beat up and you will end up lower than where you would have been, almost certainly. After a few months on the market, you'll end up lower than where you would have been had you priced it properly the first time. So I always say there's a range of where a property should be priced. We should be pricing on the lower end of that range right now. That's going to sell the home as fast as possible. And that's also going to get you the most money possible, because staying on the market, the longer you stay on, the more it is a depreciating asset. And so it's not just time on market. That time on market pushes that price down too. So I don't say go crazy and way underprice it, because we don't have the buyer activity right now to support a bidding war. There still are multiple offer situations. It still happens. But as far as a strategy goes, that could be a losing strategy. So I say price on the lower end of the range and take into account factors that may have been slightly limiting, in years past. Now they're going to be much more limiting. This is major roads. This is power lines. This is looking at, a property that's looking at commercial. These things that were little thorns in the side in the past have become big, big, big problems because buyers have so much to choose from. Buyers have so many listings. And if something doesn't check the boxes, they're going to go look at something else. And if you are a buyer, affordability is a challenge. I don't think waiting till the spring makes any sense. I think getting started now and seeing what's out there is great because you're going to have a lot to choose from now through the end of the year. And seller concessions are still, we talk about them till we're blue in the face, but they are still a powerful tool in this market to say, I'd like a concession back to either lower the purchase price or I can take it and buy down my interest rate. That's very, very powerful. And those opportunities have been out there for a while, but they're getting more and more prominent and more available as sellers get more and more anxious and frankly desperate to sell. Like I said, the ones who are not desperate to sell are pulling their home off the market, but we still have more listings than we've had at any time in the last 14 years. So there are plenty of sellers out there who still want and need to sell. That was 20 minutes. I rambled again, but thanks for being here for it. Like I said, if there's anything we can do for you, would love to have that conversation. Otherwise, love you. Talk soon.